Hello, welcome to part 2 of my Encaustic junk journal series. For part 1, you can see in the description I've put a link. This is a video of me decorating the covers. So I'm going to be adding some paperclay elements, well, really just one paperclay element, and a lot of text. So the paperclay, I decided to stitch onto the cover because I needed to stitch it because the covers need to be reinforced. The glue, the gel medium that I used that's for encaustic painting, it helped the fabric and the paper stick to the chipboard, but it wasn't as strong of an adhesion as I would have liked. So I'm stitching it just to give it a little extra reinforcement. And this is the template I'm going to be using to poke holes into the cover and also into the paperclay so that they have holes in the same spots. And of course, one of my classic mistakes, I'm using a needle to poke a hole in the cover, which if you have an awl, use an awl. It's much easier to grip, and needles just, oh my gosh, my fingers were so sore by the time I figured out what I was doing. Sometimes I just have to laugh at myself. But I finally figured it out, got the awl, poked the rest of the holes, saved my fingers. While I'm doing that, let me just tell you guys, I've opened memberships on my channel. If you go to my homepage on YouTube, you'll see a join button. And if you click that, you'll be able to see the 3 different tiers that I have. There's a friend tier for $1.99 a month. There's a student tier for $9.99 a month. And then there's an artist tier for $19.99 a month. And each tier comes with its own perks, its own extra content that you can use. And I'm really excited to offer you guys a way to support me, to help me be able to continue to make this content. I've been recently upgrading some of my equipment and taking classes and getting more supplies, which has been a bit of a struggle. So I've been needing a little bit of extra support to be able to continue to make my content. And I wanted to make it as good as I can for you guys. And answer all your questions and help you on your artistic journey. So offering these memberships is going to be a great way for us to connect, for me to be able to offer you extra content and perks, and be able to continue to create these videos and this content that you guys seem to appreciate, which I love. And I love that I'm adding so much value to your artistic journey. So check that out. So this is the paperclay. I'm kind of cutting it up into just a rectangle I'm going to add to the surface, this element. I've stamped onto the surface and adding a little bit of ink. You can't really see it in the video. It's very subtle. But I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to push too hard to get too deep of an impressions because I didn't want the holes to disappear. So once it dried, I added some wax, which is what you see. I've saturated it. It's completely soaked with encaustic medium. I found I did put a little too much on the top, so I'm taking a little bit off just so you can see the stamped impressions a little bit better. And then going through and repoking the holes, making sure I can see them. And then I'm going to stitch everything to the surface. It's much easier to do that when you've already poked the holes in the paper clay before it dries. Paper clay is, as I'm finding out, is really tough. And this is a fairly thin piece, like you can see where I rolled it out, but it is strong. I wasn't quite sure how to stitch this onto the surface, but I decided to go pretty messy because stitching the element onto onto the cover through these holes was a little bit tricky, even though I used the template and the holes are all in the same place. So I decided to stitch a few holes, a few stitches throughout the whole piece, and then tighten it so that I know that the element and the cover are lining up pretty exactly, and I can get the rest of the stitches in without too much of a problem. And it worked pretty well. So you can see it's pretty skiwampus, but it kind of adds to the grunginess of the piece, I think. So one of the things I decided was that I was going to stamp into all the sides of the cover. And in order to do that, to get some good wax impressions, I decided to add some more medium. So each side, each cover is going to have some extra wax on it so that I can stamp into the surface and get some good impressions. Because, you know, it's a book. It just screams text. And I like adding text to all my pieces anyway, but I kind of decided, let's go a little overboard with this since it is a book. And I just put text all over the place. Different fonts, some different colors, different techniques. It was really fun. So this is the back. I decided to stitch on the back as well. It also needed to be reinforced, but I'm not adding an element this time. So the stitching is a little bit easier. I did it a little bit more cleanly and faster. It went much faster without adding an element onto the surface. And also because I used my awl instead of a needle to try to poke holes into the cover. Still, I'm laughing at myself because of that. I added a little wax on top of this as well, again because I'm going to be stamping and adding text onto the covers. This time I'm not just stamping impressions, I'm also adding some India ink so that there's a little bit of color attached to those impressions as well. And I do like how I used the clear here instead of the white, so you can still see the tissue wrap and the fabric and everything underneath. One thing you have to be careful about is since the cover is chipboard, it's essentially just thick paper. When you fuse one side, the other side gets warm, and so you need to take that into an account when you're working on the cover. I realized I had to be careful that I wasn't smearing or destroying what I had just done on the other side of the cover by working on the other side. So I had to put something in between there. I used a stamp with kind of a glossy back to it as something to protect it from my fingers, so I wasn't pushing on it too hard, and it worked pretty well. This is one of my favorite stencils. I love the text in this. This is a Prima marketing stencil. I'll try and find the link for you guys too. So if you're interested in getting it, you can get it. One other little mistake that I made is I forgot how slowly oil paint dries. And I went and picked up the journal and totally smeared the oil paint I had just added to the spine. So, yeah, oil paint is not India ink. It does not dry quickly. So be careful if you're adding it to more than one side. I felt like the inside of the front cover needed a little bit of color. So all in all, this piece is pretty messy, but the pages are all different colors. There's lots of colors on the cover, and lots of grunginess, messiness, lots of splatters. It's been really fun to work on. I love the end result. I think I may work on see if I can do a cleaner journal in the future. But look out for the third part. I'm going to be decorating the pages of this piece, of this journal. So that'll be another video coming in the next few weeks. So watch out for that. Don't forget to check out the memberships, see if that's something that you'd be interested in taking advantage of, and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.